But there are some things that would be helpful, documents that folks could gather that maybe will not be sent to them, as they typically would be, that they might have to go find to make it easier for them to file their taxes.
Yes, yes. So be sure to have these things ready. Stimulus payments. If you received stimulus payments, you want to let your tax preparer know how much you received and in which round. There were 2 rounds of stimulus. There was the initial round, which was in the April, May timeframe. And then there was a round that just occurred at the beginning of this year. Those payments were based off of prior year tax returns that were filed. So if your situation has changed in 2020, when you file your 2020 tax return, you'll record how much you've received from each of the different round 1 and round 2 from the 2 different rounds. And if you're eligible for additional monies, then you will get a credit on your tax return. So you want to make sure that you know how much stimulus you've received and in which round. So that may take some time going back to mid 2020 to see how much was either direct deposited into your account, or you may have received a check. You may have received a debit card with these funds on the debit card. So however you've recorded or wherever you will find that information for you personally, just make sure that you have that information readily available. The example that I continue to use is, let's say you were a married couple in 2019, and then you had a baby in 2020. That dependent would make you eligible for additional stimulus monies. So, but the government doesn't know that you had a dependent yet, because they have that your new family member has not been reported on your tax return. But when you do report your new family member on your tax return in 2020, you can get an additional credit. So you want to make sure that you know how much you've received and that you're filing the right forms so that you can potentially get additional monies. Unemployment, a lot of folks in 2020 received unemployment who did not previously collect unemployment or were not previously eligible. So self-employed individuals were eligible this year. Partners in a partnership were eligible for unemployment. There was an extension of unemployment. There were additional funds to unemployment, and that is taxable at the federal level. It is not taxable for New Jersey, but it is taxable at the federal level. And New Jersey does not mail you your 1099 for unemployment. So you want to make sure you're going onto the New Jersey website. It's on the same website where you would typically file for unemployment, and get your 1099 to provide to your tax preparer. You also want to make sure that the 1099 that you have is accurate. Not meaning to be an alarmist, but there has been a lot of fraud when it comes to unemployment. We've seen some letters that have gone to business owners for their employees who were, I'll say, trying to collect unemployment. The employees weren't trying to collect, but somebody, a fraudulent person, was trying to collect under that employee's name. We've seen it in many states. It's not just New Jersey, but just you may want to just check and to make sure that your unemployment document is accurate. The home office work paper, which we'll provide to you, we'll send it out to everybody who's here today, so that you can gather all of your information, all of your expenses. And these are expenses that you wouldn't typically include with your tax information. So for example, you don't get a typical tax deduction for your homeowner's insurance, but you would get a deduction for your home office, a pro rata deduction for your homeowner's insurance for your home office. So it has some extra expenses that you wouldn't typically provide with your tax return documents. 1099s, I do emphasize you want to gather them, make sure that they are reporting the correct number so that you report the correct number. There oftentimes we have seen the payor include reimbursable expenses. So for example, if they're paying for your travel time, or they're paying for your parking or train ticket, meals, any of those reimbursable type expenses, sometimes they will include that in the 1099 gross payment to you. So you want to make sure that you're reporting that as revenue and then deducting the expense. We have seen where they haven't matched up, and it can just sometimes cause reconciling differences at the IRS. And then a big one, the IRS continues to send emails about and warn us about interest on your 2019 refunds from the IRS. If you received, since refunds were paid so late because the deadline was July 15th, the IRS paid interest on refunds that were paid after April 15th. So a lot of people received additional money from the IRS on top of their refund. That additional money, the interest on your refund, is taxable. So if you said, oh, I was supposed to get $1,000 back and I got $1,020, I win. Just know that $20 is taxable. So you may just want to look at how much you received back from the IRS and make sure you're including it, because the IRS has come out multiple times and said, don't forget to include this.
Mm-hmm. And Anj, I know that there's been many bulletins and information coming out around fraud. I know you touched on that when you said about checking your unemployment, but I think that fraud has just been, pretty rampant this year in particular. So probably more in just checking your unemployment, it's checking everything really, right?
It is. I've seen fake 1099s. People receive fake 1099s, and not for small amounts, for $150,000. So the IRS has warned it has warned that you want to be careful on who you're giving your information to. I think, somebody who receives a fake 1099, they're anticipating that they're going to call up and say, I received this 1099. Oh, well, what's your social? Let me check. And then you're just going to give, and you're going to give your social security number because you want to check about this fake 1099 and mistaken. And so it's easy to fall into those because you want to make sure everything's correct. My advice is always, if you think that you have received something that is not correct, contact the IRS. See if it's actually been reported under your social security number. The IRS can make a note on your account that you've contacted them, that you've received fraudulent documentation. If it is unemployment, you have to contact whichever state the unemployment is coming from. So just be on the lookout for things that don't feel right. I'll say, use a little bit of your intuition, like this can't be right. Ask somebody before you make a move to call and give out a social security number or date of birth. And again, just make sure you're reporting all of the income that you actually did receive. And if there are any discrepancies, of course, that are fraudulent, then you're not responsible for those. But just be aware that it is rampant. It is out there.
Okay.
Andrea, another question in the chat.
Sure.
In terms of collecting unemployment, if you had taxes pulled, will you still need to pay more?
It depends on how much you had withheld in taxes. So, and it depends on your tax rate. Some people withheld a flat, 10%, but their tax rate may be a little higher. They may be 12% or 15%. So you may have to pay a little more. It also depends on the other credits on your return. So some folks did have taxes withheld, others did not. So it depends on how it plays out on your tax return.